Hey guys, so today we're talking about cube roots. So I have some vocab written down already with examples. So make sure you get your title written down and then we'll get started on the vocab. So a perfect cube is a number that can be written as the cube of an integer. Okay, so get that written down and then we'll talk about these examples. So when you see something to the third power, that's your symbol for cubing. So that means you're multiplying a number by itself twice. So you have your number 4, and then you're multiplying by itself 2 more times. So you notice it's a cube. There's 1, 2, 3 fours. Okay? So 4 cubed is 4 times 4 times 4. To undo it, you're going to take the cube root. This is the symbol for a cube root. So instead of a square root, you have a little 3 hanging over it. Okay? And then we're going to get more into how you find those cube roots. So make sure you get that vocab written down and those examples, and then we'll move on. Okay, so we're going to talk about finding cube roots. So your first example is the cube root of 8. Now I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do this. I'm not sure what way you learned it, so hopefully this will make sense if I show you both ways. So one way you can do it is prime factorization, okay? So if you guys remember, you're kind of making those factor trees. So what times what gives you 8? Okay, so you have 2 times 4. You cannot break down the 2 anymore, but you can break down the 4. What times what gives you 4? That's going to be 2 times 2. Then if you notice, you need to find a cube root. We know it's a number that goes into it, multiplied by itself twice. Well, if you look, you have 1, 2, 3 2s. So that means the cube root of 8 is 2. And to prove it, you can go 2 times 2 times 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So that way you know your answer is just 2. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Another way, I don't know if you all learned it this way, we call it upside down division. So you break it down by prime numbers. So what's the smallest possible number that goes into 8? Well, that's 2. 2 times what gives you 8? That's 4. Then you can break it down again. What's the smallest number that goes into 2? Sorry, that goes into 4, which is 2. And 2 times 2 gives you 4, which again, you have those 3 2s. Okay? So there is more than one way to do this. Okay? So make sure you have that written down, and then we'll move on to the next one. I'm going to write down the next example. So this one is going to be the cube root of negative 27. Now I just want to point out, when you have cubes, you're allowed to have a negative in the cube root. Okay? So let's talk about this one. If we break it down, what numbers go into negative 27? Well, we know that we have negative 3 times 9, right? And then what number goes into 9? Well, you can also have 3 and 3. But think about it. A negative times a negative gives you a positive. And then you have the same thing. You have 3 negative 3's left over, meaning that that is the cube root of negative 27. And again, you can test it out. Negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. Well, negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. And 9 times negative 3 is negative 27. Okay? So make sure you have that written down. We're going to do a couple more examples. I know it might be a little confusing, but hopefully the more we go on, the more it'll make sense. Now I'm going to show you one more example with these, and this one has a fraction. Okay? So don't be worried about the fraction. Think about it this way. If we do the prime factorization of 1, what number times itself twice gives you 1? Well, your only possibility is going to be 1, because 1 times 1 times 1 gives you 1. So you know your top number will be 1. Okay? Now the bottom number is 64. So again, what number goes into 64? Well, we know that 8 times 8 is 64, and then keep breaking it down. What goes into 8? 4 times 2, right? Well, you have your 2's, you can't break them down, but what about your 4's? Those can be broken down again to 2's. And if you look at this, you have 3 sets of 2's. So that means you have 2 times 2, which is 4, 2 times 2, which is 4, and 2 times 2, which is 4. So that means the cube root of 64 is 4. And to prove that, 4 times 4 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 is 64. Okay? So make sure you have that written down, and then we're going to talk about evaluating expressions with cube roots. Okay, so we're going to talk about evaluating expressions with cube roots. So I wrote my example, 2 times the cube root of negative 216 minus 3. So get that written down, and then we'll move on. So I'm going to write this over here, because I know I'm going to have to factor it out. So hopefully you guys know the trick by now, that if all of these numbers add up, it can be divisible by 3. So 6 plus 1 is 7, plus 2 is 9. I know that's divisible by 3, so I'm going to try that. And 3 times 72 gives you 216. Now remember, one of those has to be negative. It doesn't matter what one. We know that if it's negative, they're all going to be negative. Okay? And then 72 is 8 times 9. 8 breaks down to 4 times 2. 9 breaks down to 3 times 3. These are done. My 2 can't go any further, but my 4 can break down into 2 times 2. Okay? So now, look at your sets. You have a 3 and a 2, a 3 and a 2, and a 3 and a 2. And I know I kind of circled those weird, but you need to get into the realization that these are sets, okay? You had 3 3's, and then you had 3 2's, right? Well, 3 times 2 is 6, and that means you have 3 different sets of 6, so your cube root is 6. Now remember, because it's a negative, it's going to be negative 6, because negative 6 times negative 6 is positive 36, times negative 6 is negative 216. Okay? So now we're going to take that, because that's our cube root, and we're going to rewrite it in our problem. Now that we've solved that, you guys should be able to do this. So order of operations, say multiplication first. 2 times negative 6, negative 12, bring down your problem. Negative 12 minus 3, guys, that's the same thing as saying you have negative 12, and then you're adding 3 more negatives. Your answer is negative 15. Okay? Make sure you guys get that written down, and I'm going to write down your next problem. Okay. Here's your next one. The cube root of 125 cubed plus 21. Think about that. You're cube rooting it, and then you're cubing it. If you really think about it, if you cube a cube root, they're just going to cancel. You could totally figure it out. So you could break this down, and you know, okay, well, what goes into 125? Think about it. It ends in 5, right? 5 times what gives you 125? Break it down. Think about it. Hopefully, you know that 125 divided by 5 is 25. And then you can break it down again, and it's 5, right? But then you're going to cube it again. So basically, it defeats the purpose. It cancels out, because then if you just take 5 and you cube it, you still get 125. Okay? So if you see a cube root being cubed, you should know that these guys just cancel, and you're just left with 125. So then continue your problem. What's 125 plus 21? Well, 5 and 1 is 6. 2 and 2 is 4. And that's your answer. Okay? So make sure you guys get that written down, and then I'm going to write a couple on your owns for you, and I want you guys to try them on your own. That does not mean just wait or fast forward and watch me do them. Actually make an effort because you guys are going to need this for your quiz. Okay, so I'm only giving you 2 practice problems. I want you guys to try them. Make the effort, try them. This one's going to take you a little bit longer. You're going to have to break this one down. It's okay if it takes you a bit longer. Try them and see how you do. That means pause the video. Don't just wait for me to explain them. Make that effort to make sure that you really understand. So again, thanks for making the effort, not just waiting. So we're going to start with the first one. So we're going to break it down. We need to find the cube root of 8. Well, hopefully you guys remember that you're taking 8 and you're finding what goes into it. We know that 2 times 4 is 8, and 2 times 2 is 4, so the cube root is going to be 2. Okay, so we're going to rewrite it. 18 minus 4, put it in parentheses. Do not just write them next to each other. Okay? Now, order of operations, you need to multiply first, don't subtract. So 4 times 2 is 8. So now you have 18 minus 8, and you know that 18 minus 8 is just 10. Okay? So that one was a little bit easier. Let's talk about this next one. You have to break down 216, and I know that's a pretty big number, so let's talk about this. Guys, if you struggle with division, that is okay. Remember, whenever you have an even number, it's always divisible by 2. So if you're not sure, just start with 2. It's okay if it takes you longer. So I know that 216 divided by 2 is 108. If you're not sure how I did it, that's okay, guys. Look, 216 divided by 2. 2 goes into 2 once. You don't have anything left. Then you have a 1. 2 cannot go into 1. That's why I put the 0. You bring down the 6, and 2 goes into 16 8 times. Okay? Like I said, it's okay if it takes you longer. It's not a big deal. Then we're going to break it down again. Again, if you're not sure, take it and divide it by 2. That's okay. Let's try it. 108 divided by 2. 2 goes into 10 5 times. 2 times 5 is 10. You're left with 8. And 2 goes into 8 4 times. So now I know I have 2 and 54. Okay? Now guys, I know there are bigger numbers that go into 54. But again, if you are struggling, divide it. 54 divided by 2. 2 goes into 5 2 times. 2 times 2 is 4. You're left with 1. Bring down the 4. 2 goes into 14 7 times. So now that breaks down to 2 times 27. Okay? Now hopefully you know that 27 is divisible by what? 9 times 3. And 9 is broken down by 3 and 3. Okay? So guys, look at what you have. You have 3 3s and 3 2s. That means you're going to put them together. So you have 3 times 2, 3 times 2, 3 times 2. That should let you know that the cube root of 216 is 6. Okay? So now you have 5 times 6 minus 19. Okay? Well, 5 times 6 is 30. And then you have to take 30 minus 19. Okay? Now, for those of you that struggle with mental math, just write it out. 30 minus 19. Can you take 9 from 0? Nope. So borrow 1 from the 3. That changes to a 2. Then you're going to bring the 1 over. 10 minus 9 is 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. So your answer is just 11. Okay? So guys, make sure you have that written down. That is all I have for you today. You're going to need these notes. They're going to help you with your homework, with your practice problems, and with your quiz, okay? So make sure you guys understand this. If you need to go back, rewind it, review it, pause it, whatever you need. If you need extra help, make sure you ask me for questions.